All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We'll start with a quick round of introductions.
Hi, I'm Lee Slazak. I'm Senior Vice President of Data and Analytics for Lennar Homes.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Yeah, I'm Varun. I'm Senior Director of Data and Analytics for Lennar Homes. And yes, that's my picture. It was taken a long time back.
Hey everyone, I'm Mylan Ackerman, and I'm a Senior Solutions Architect within the Data and AI practice in PwC.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, and thank you for making it to the session. And I hope you find it insightful and have a few takeaways from today. By way of introduction, Rohit Sinha, I'm a Managing Director in PwC's Data and AI practice. I also solely focus on all things data and AI for AWS for the firm. We've been working with Lennar for a little over a year, and I'm super excited to share a real-life case study for a full-scale transformation of building a modern AWS data and AI platform to scale AI at Lennar with our Lennar leadership. So with that, I'll quickly cover the agenda briefly. So we'll start with where we were about 8-10 months ago and how we started this engagement from start to finish in about 10 months or so. We'll look at our architecture and patterns in detail, including our MLOps platform, which is based on SageMaker. And MLOps and Palantir today drive bulk of the AI for Lennar at scale. And then we'll touch upon where we are today in the migration journey and how this kind of session helps you, especially if you're in the middle of the modernization for your current organization, or you're thinking about how a modern data and AI platform can help you kind of scale the next set of AI/ML use cases, as well as how the platform can lay a foundation for Gen AI use cases and what do you take away from the session. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lee to kick us off.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, Rohit, and thanks to all of you for joining us. A little bit about Lennar. So myself, I've been with Lennar for almost a year and a half. And as I mentioned, my focus is data and analytics. And one of the reasons that I joined Lennar was to help drive a transformation to really get us to the point where we had enterprise scale. The company is growing tremendously fast. It's one of the largest home builders in the United States. It's very successful, and each year after year, we continue to build more and more homes, adding to our scale. As we looked forward, we realized that the foundation we had needed some attention, and it needed some work to get us where we knew we could be in terms of technology, data, and AI. So let's talk about where we were. Look, our approach, as Rohit mentioned, we started with a study. I mean, I've worked together with Rohit for now, I think it's a little longer than a year. And we started to look at what we had, and what we saw was, and I think he's going to cover some of this in kind of where we came from, but really a siloed approach to data. There were a number of legacy systems, there were previous attempts of consolidation that weren't successful, and they were all still running in parallel. So we needed to discover really what we had and where to go from there. There were also a lot of operational issues that we saw. There was constant data quality issues, constant data latency issues. Most of the calls I would get would be because data didn't show up someplace. And it was very difficult to track it down because there were so many hops from source to target that it made it very challenging to troubleshoot and to manage. I think the other thing that I saw when I came in was, it's interesting because my first day, we actually went MVP on the previous data platform. And one of the things when I looked at that, I realized it looked pretty good. It was a good first start, but it was really just a data warehouse. We didn't have the data lake aspect of it, and we didn't really even have model data. It was all very flat, wide tables. And so my concern is over time that really wouldn't scale. And so working together with Rohit and team, we came up with really an approach that allowed us to essentially drop in a new solution in parallel and then slowly migrate over as we went forward. So Rohit, you want to talk a little bit about our approach?
Yeah, I mean, as Lee mentioned, right? I mean, the main point of our approach was like how we started the engagement. I mean, we had an end outcome in mind. We needed to finish migration in a defined time and not prolong it because we wanted to get out of the legacy systems that were supporting bulk of Lenar's reporting analytics today. And by analytics, it was far and few, right? We were mostly talking about prescribed reports, right? And yeah, I mean, there are certain pockets of Lenar where there are kind of building AI and AI-based applications, but largely we needed a platform that can scale, that can provide that kind of data robustness at scale to support the AI use cases.
You know, the other thing I'd add is it was key for us to move quickly because the half-life on these kind of projects and the tolerance for kind of senior leadership to continue to invest and invest, they want to see the value come as quickly as possible. So it was, you know, through our partnership, I think, with your teams and our teams that we were able to move so quickly.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there were, like I said, there was lack of cross-functional view of data, right? So yes, you can have marketing data in an excellent shape or form, but you're lacking kind of how you tie this information together from construction to land acquisition to how you are kind of converting leads to the entire lead journey, right? So all of this becomes instrumental when you think of a platform that can deliver integrated value of data at scale, right? So I think kind of that's where we were, and that's a little bit of our approach that followed.
I'll let you talk through the roadmap.
Okay. So as we talked about a little bit, right? Our approach was critical in the execution of the program, from identifying a strategic first use case that kind of checks all the capabilities of a modern platform, to building trust with the technology and business leadership, and then domain-based migration, right, which becomes critical because you can now in a staggered fashion onboard use cases as well as users on a modern platform. So how do you get about doing that? And there were kind of three core asks as we were standing up the platform. The first and foremost being the access to information in lower latency or closer to real time, right? So the absolute table stakes was an hour or less. So that was kind of the requirement of how soon we can deliver the data in a curated, conformed fashion for end consumption, right? The second, Lenar has a pretty diverse engineering team, which means that there are multiple builders on the platform. Now, we needed to enable a multi-user platform that would help kind of co-development across the platform, right? Which now means a multi-user dev environment backed by CI/CD and DevOps. And as we were kind of standing up the platform, we have built it with kind of Terraform modules from get-go, backed by Git integration for CI/CD and DevOps, as well as a very well-defined branching strategy and a code push to kind of merge to production in a seamless way, so you can get from code deployment to production in a much reduced cycle time, right? And it all helps with how fast we can roll things to production, how seamless the rollout to production happens, and so on and so forth. And then when you look at the foundation of all of this is to drive analytics at scale, right? So the platform needs to support the scale in data. There's the low latency of information, as I mentioned, as well as kind of enabling a cross-functional view of data for everybody, backed by fine-grained access control. So everybody has access to data, but they have access to data what they should have, not open and wide access. So enabling fine-grained access control in a Lake and Snowflake environment was instrumental for us, and that's kind of those were the three, I would say, key asks of how we were standing up the solution. I'll talk a little bit about our core tenets of the architecture. And as we look at the 6 core things, right? The cross-functional the cross-functional access to data was super important, and we enabled fine-grained access control, including role-based access control across the lake in Snowflake, for people to have access to data for building cross-functional insights. Data quality and lineage was table stakes. It was foundational part of the data platform that we were building. We implemented Atacama on AWS as part of DQ and monitoring, as well as lineage from all the way from source to consumption. Now, when you think of what Atacama does, from enabling data quality rules to alerts backed by ServiceNow tickets or ServiceNow alerts, help build sort of a data observability on the platform. Meaning, if I know my certain kind of jobs or certain things are running behind schedule, the alert can go proactively to the end users or the data consumers to inform them of the delay, rather than them finding out once the data was not available. I talked about hourly or less than hourly reporting or the need of data requirement that was there, right? And the way we integrated the AWS components, especially Glue, Lambda, EMR, and dbt, was instrumental in us bringing scale to the volume of data, as enabling the scaling of the solution, as well as, especially when you think of how a solution should scale up and down, to avoid any cost overruns of a cloud platform, right? Optimizing cloud TCO is instrumental. So every time when we look at modernizing a legacy platform to cloud, the total cost of ownership should be the key driver for business case. Right? And when we looked at building the platform, we looked at where auto-scaling can be enabled across the entire backbone of the components, as well as when the platform is not running, it should scale down, or the platform is not running with high volume, it should scale down, so optimizing the cost. We also segregated or siphoned off consumption from Snowflake to Lakehouse or to the lake layers to avoid the unnecessary cost overrun on the Snowflake platform. So that, coupled with the Lakehouse and the Snowflake layer, helped us kind of optimize the cloud cost spend by about 60 to 70% as compared to the platform that Lee talked about that was originally there. And a lot of this with the sole focus of enabling AI at scale for Lennar, right? So everything that we are building or we have built and we are thinking about building is to scale the future of data and AI and associated use cases at Lennar. Now, I'll talk about architecture a little bit in terms of, now, when you look at the architecture, right, it looks like a very standard medallion architecture, right? But the choice of tools and integrations are what kind of sets this apart. And the other key driving point is we are building it with the team, and we are not building it that a platform is unsupportable or a platform is so difficult to support. So we're building it with the mindset that once we transition to support and operate, it's an easy set of solution, right? And hence, there are certain choice points that we have deliberately made, especially the use of some of the best-of-breed AWS native services like Glue, Lambda, DMS for integrations, EMR for running dbt at scale, as well as the choice of open storage format Iceberg in this case, right? And I mean, the reason for including Iceberg in here is there are several benefits, right? You don't need to again, pipe the data into Snowflake. You can use external tables directly read off of Iceberg. And also the performance benefits that comes with an Iceberg format. Now, when you also see the box that is below the storage layer, it talks about Atacama, and I mentioned briefly. I'll double-click on that a little bit. So the way we have integrated data quality is including the data quality business rules as well as data freshness checks across the platform. And that coupled with the data lineage that we built with Atacama end-to-end, that provides the backbone for how an alert can be tied with the lineage to understand the data platform observability, which is super critical as you're building these modern platforms. We also have a custom audit balance and control framework. Now, what that means is it's a reusable Python-based utility. Now, what it does is basically captures job stats and errors and warnings, et cetera. But the key part of that is my every single job that is running is tracked from a start, end, reconciliation, meaning how much data was read, how much is written. Reconciliation and balancing is important. So especially from a financial and accounting perspective, as well as for several key data sets, right? So that includes all of the reconciliation and balancing in addition to the job stats. Now, when you overlay that with Atacama, which is doing kind of observability, and you tie with your job stats along with lineage, that can truly work as an observability platform out of the box with custom development, right? And that's what we have built here. And I'll talk about the data flow a little bit, right? So there are some ingestion patterns. I'll talk about it in the next slide as we double-click on the pattern. But as the data comes into bronze layer, which is your raw bucket, right, through several ingestion patterns, S3-based event triggers then load the data directly into pre-stage, which are silver layer. So data is pretty much available in raw form, cleansed, curated, real-time for access. From there, a set of DBT models, which are domain-specific, trigger and load the data into your domain or your target-centric structures, right? From there, or the same pipeline then continues over to Snowflake, which has a set of DIMs and facts, as well as a set of aggregated reporting tables. So all of this is orchestrated at 30 minutes because we are meeting an SLA of over less than an hour, right? So from the data inception and source to the data availability and consumption layer, that overall cycle time is about 30 minutes. And that helps us keep the SLA for about an hour. There's also a box for MDM. So we are also, there's also a program for master data that's underway to master key domains like customer, vendor, item. And that curated data, or the master data, is also going to be ingested into the platform for overall analytics, right? For better quality of data. And then what you see on the in a small box in the enrich layer, which is your Amazon SageMaker box, Mylan will double-click on that. That's the MLOps platform that we have expanded it to. And we'll take a look at how MLOps is using the data in the data lake layers to not just build model at scale, but build, manage, and deploy at scale. So we'll touch upon that a little bit. And then your serve layer is practically for reports and dashboards, backed by Power BI, Tableau. There are some SSRS custom reports as well. And then there are some custom applications that are written in Node.js. But all of this is sourcing the data from either Snowflake or the lake layers. And then you have Palantir Foundry, which is going to be sourcing data from the lake layers for hydrating into the Palantir Foundry ontology. So with that, let me dive into the patterns for each of the ingest, process, and consumption. So for ingest, we have built 6 patterns, which primarily serve as kind of the ingestion needs for all of Linar's as well as third-party systems. We've used AWS DMS. We use AppFlow for Salesforce and Salesforce Marketing Cloud. We've used Glue APIs for any API exchange. We have used AWS Transfer Family for any of the SFTP requirements, as well as Click, which is a real-time replication engine for some of the ERPs that exist at Linar. Now, across these 6 when we look at the type of data or the type of sources, it can easily be scaled to any of the net new sources that we go after next. And then all of this integration is backed or integrated with audit, balance, and control framework, which I talked about briefly, which now tracks your kind of your end-to-end life cycle of data movement as it happens with the point of view of ingestion in this case. Now, as you look at the processing, I talked about this briefly. As the data comes into Bronze, from there, event-based triggers happen based on S3 events, load the data into pre-stage, pre-real-time. From there, every 30-minute batch cycle, micro-batch cycle runs to kind of take the specific DBT models to populate your target-centric structures. And the same pipeline then extends into Snowflake and populates the dimensions and facts, which is another set of DBT models. And then kind of your final aggregate structures are ready. All of this happening within 30-minute cycles. And the lake stairs that I talked about is open storage, Iceberg format, to enable scalability, schema evolution, as well as optimizing query performance. And then on consumption side, like I said, Snowflake has a dimensional and dims and fact-based structure, which helps to kind of scale, and self-service analytics is critical, right? So we're driving more and more self-service adoption rather than more prescribed reports. So it makes it easy to traverse through the data set and join data set across the different domains as well. And I talked about Iceberg populating the Palantir Foundry as well as MLOps platform on SageMaker, which then becomes the backbone of how we'll scale AI at Lennar. And then why DBT is important. So again, if you're coming from a SQL background, and if you're transitioning into kind of a modern lake, Snowflake-based architecture, DBT makes that transition very easy. It's still a SQL-based tool, as well as the performance of DBT and Snowflake really has its benefits for enabling a smoother transition. So talking about what are the capabilities that this platform has, right? From hourly refreshes to what previously existed was a 2 to 3 times per day refreshes, right? We built all of this through Terraform modules backed by Git integration for CI/CD and DevOps, which now means that I can create a new UAT environment or a new environment for performance testing in hours rather than which would have taken us days. Cross-functional data access is super important, right? With proper access controls, including RBAC has been integrated. Data quality is the backbone for everything we do, and especially when you look at how some of the organizations think about Gen AI use cases, you have to spend effort in curating the data, right? So where this helps is now when this data is trusted with the right quality, it can scale your AI use cases much faster. And then we'll talk about MLOps in a little bit with Mylan, but the whole medallion architecture lends itself to how we can scale ML and AI with both MLOps through SageMaker as well as Palantir. So with that, let me pass it over to Mylan to talk about MLOps with SageMaker.
Sure. Thanks, Rohit. So yeah, Lennar has made great strides in their data modernization journey, just beginning with or building a modern data platform and then progressing to a scaled MLOps platform to address their key business challenges. This began with what Rohit mentioned with the unified data medallion, the medallion data and AI layer, which does integrate open source storage formats with key features such as security, data quality and data governance. And this allowed for data access and again, data quality. And with that data access, that broke down the data silos that were in place. And so teams were able to collaborate. It was able to encourage collaboration across teams. And with these with the security features and governance features, the security in place does ensure that sensitive information and data is protected, and the governance features do ensure compliance with industry standards. And then the next step was integrating the MLOps platform with the Gold layer in Snowflake, and that did improve the efficiency and ability to develop and deploy these ML models, reducing the cycle time, reducing the development cycle time for those models. And with that, Lennar is able to leverage predictive analytics to more efficiently project their forecasts, project demand forecast, manage their inventory, and also optimize their supply chain. And the AI models also are able to detect any anomalies or issues earlier on in the dev cycle. And then ML models also do provide better customer segmentation, which does allow for more personalized marketing strategies there. So we can go next one. And I'm excited to speak to the key features of the platform. At the heart of it, there's the centralized feature store, which does ensure that the data scientists and engineers are all using the latest and high-quality features, rather than trying to rebuild their own features on their own end, causing redundancies and creating inconsistencies there. And so, because we are able to ensure that this feature store is available, that does reduce cycle time there in the development, and does provide them with those features that are ready to go and can be leveraged. And then in the integration of SageMaker, the SageMaker pipelines into the workflow within the lower environments, the dev and test environments, does allow for more efficient processing of data and model validation. And then when the models are ready to be deployed to production, that can also occur within the same pipeline and can be handled more efficiently there. And then the MLOps architecture does enable the data scientists and engineers to have a dedicated environment to do their testing and ensure that they have tested for any bugs or just made sure the models are achieving what they should be achieving before it gets into production. And so that MLOps architecture does allow for those dedicated test environments and experimentation environments. And then once commits do need to be made to GitHub, there are validation checks within GitHub that are automatically triggered that do detect any issues up front before it is committed and pushed into the pipeline and pushed in the code and eventually, which may eventually go to production. So those validation checks up front, whenever a commit is made, just adds more confidence and does ensure that we are only pushing fully tested models to production. And the final feature is ensuring that we are only pushing out those fully tested models to production, and that they are able to handle real-time analytics and also batch analytics, real-time predictions and batch predictions, and providing those insights with those models in production. And so I'll hand it over to Varun to speak to the value realization.
And cover one more thing before you go. So if you look at the architecture for MLOps, right? I mean, the one important call out here is like it gives you a four environment integration, right? From the ability to build models and test models in a completely controlled test environment, meaning it's sort of a sandbox, but it has production data because you want to build models, test models, hypothesis on production data, right? So all the boxes that are there, if you can see it as sort of an eye chart, it helps you look at it from a test, dev, or a sandbox, dev, test, production, right? Which provides a whole model build lifecycle, not just to experiment, but as you've gone past the experiment, to take this to production and run it at scale. So I think that's a call out that most kind of companies, when we experiment with a true MLOps platform, we sort of start pulling the production data in sort of a dev sort of environment, and again, that's not ideal, right? So this is a very well integrated structure that allows model management, model migration, model ops end to end. I just wanted to throw that out. Varun, over to you for.
Thank you, Rohit and Mylan. This was awesome. And I couldn't wait to get out of that chair. So thank you again. For people that have center of gravity issues, those chairs are deadly. All right. So we'll talk a little bit about the value realization for Lennar. But before we even go there, I wanted to just acknowledge, I think both Mylan and Rohit did an awesome job explaining those eye charts. So don't let them off the hook. Ask them as many questions as you can towards the end of it, because those are very important concepts, and those define the how. Now, with that, the value realization for Lennar. So all that's great, right? We're building a great architecture in AWS. Why should I care? Like, what is there for us in that kind of a platform that we should care about, right? The first thing, you go to cloud to save cost. At Lennar, we had multiple different legacy platforms that we were running data in a more federated way. If you ask other people, in a more fragmented way. Different people, different opinions. But overall, what we are looking to do is to consolidate all that cost at one place. So that was a big driver for us, because we wanted to make sure that we are able to run our operations at a much, much lower cost than we are. Because Lennar's data is going to grow faster than its revenue. And we know that. Everybody knows that. So we need to be very, very forthright when it comes to managing how we are going to scale that infrastructure, right? Second thing we wanted to make sure is we wanted to unify everything together. There is no point in having 5, 6, 7, or 8 different data platforms that are fragmented, doing something same or similar, right? So that was the other outlook there. Now, you go to cloud for productivity. One big thing for our productivity is to get our macros right. So what are our macros? How many homes we sold, how many homes we closed, and how many homes we started. And that macro is something that we want to know as quickly as possible, as early as possible. And we need to be able to drive those productivity gains, and the platform allows us to kind of do that, right? Then, of course, there are a lot of benefits around process-based consumption, which are more persona set up. And there are some gains around robust data management, too. Now, let me spend a minute here, right? We talked about data management all the time. You hear words like quality, lineage, all those words, right? All those words are very important, because all those are input metric to what comes out of all of that, which is trust. You want to build a platform that has the trust of your business users, of your IT users, and of all the external use cases that you may determine. So trust is an important metric, and that's what you're after, and that's where you want to invest a lot of time in robust data management, which our platform does, as people explain. Now, finally, you also want to make the architecture what I would call future-ready, right? The world is evolving around us. The world is changing around us fairly quickly. So your architecture should evolve into advanced use cases on generative AI, through RAGs, through vector databases, and AWS as a platform implementation today, with the focus that Mylan talked about, which is what I would call industrializing machine learning, right? The MLOps is nothing but industrializing machine learning. It allows us to do that, right? And that's the great unlock and a value realization for Lennar there, right? And I will also talk a little bit about, on the next slide, on how close we are to that value realization. So if you go to the next slide, we have close to about 13,000 end users that use and abuse analytics in one way or the other. We have rolled out the platform capabilities to close to 5,000 users and counting. By the end of the year, half of our user base would be using the platform capabilities that we are building in the partnership, right? And that's a big win for us, because sometimes the platforms are great, but there is no user engagement. And any platform that has no engagement will die, right? So that's why this metric is very, very important, right? Second thing that I'll talk about is about 90% of our data assets are now consolidated into this new platform. Now, what does that mean? It means that we've been able to source all the internal data that really matters to us, the finance data, the construction data, the purchasing data, the IT data. Additionally, we've been able to source a lot of external data that we use on a repeated basis. MLS data, Atom data, Zonda, there are a lot of other data sets that we consume on a regular basis. We have brought internal and external data together into the platform to unlock a lot of use cases, which I see a lot of people in the room that are working on today. And thank you for the support for showing up. All right. Now, you also want to be able to make sure that you're not just building the platform. As you're building it, you are beginning to deploy a lot of use cases that have some kind of a business value, right? So again, there are people in the room. We talk about 2 or 3 use cases we have deployed. There are much more than that take the data and build effective business stickiness around the context that we have. One such use case is around making our internet sales consultants more productive. And the team that built it is here in the room with us, right? And they were able to do it because we can consolidate the data so quickly. Now, and finally, overall, if you have the data constructed and consolidated at one single place, then your generative AI use cases become a whole lot easier, because now you can actually push into things like SageMaker, Bedrock, and quickly scale the application. Even if you have to use the features of Salesforce or other third-party functional systems, you are able to do that because you have the data consolidated. And now we'll talk about the so what for you, right? So if you go to the next slide, so there are 3 key takeaways from this conversation, right? Number 1 is, why would you need a partnership like this? You need a partnership like this because you want to be able to make sure that you are doing strategic planning through execution end to end. Like you plan in years and you execute in days and weeks. And this kind of a partnership allows you to do that, right? Second, architecture matters, design matters. And because architecture and design matter, you want to build things that are scalable, that are repeatable, that are maintainable, and that will have the stickiness even when you're gone, so that the business value keeps coming in, right? And finally, I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about how are you going to build something that's a little more future-proof, right? And that partnership like that enables it because you have a lot of external perspective coming in, you have a lot of internal perspective in the whole setup, and you are jointly co-building for the future. And that's why it's important that if you're starting on your migration journey, you effectively partner to get to the finish line fairly quickly. And with that, I think, Rohit, Lee, anything to add?
I think we can.
I think we're running ahead of time, so we can open up for questions and either address questions, go back to the architecture, and address anything that you guys have questions on.
Okay, I think that's our time today.
Thank you all.